I announced my retirement 6 weeks or 8 weeks ago. I have 1 year left because of the merger with my label pushed everything back 1 year. So I have one album left to deliver.
I'm proud to say that I am country music. They've made a home for me there. I'm not the country music, but I belong to it, and as long as they'll let me be there, it's where I'll be.
Garth Brooks was living two lives, and nobody knew it. On stage, he was America's biggest country star. At home, he was a ghost. He spent 200 days a year on the road while his marriage crumbled. His wife discovered 127 secret phone calls and a mysterious Tiffany receipt. The divorce cost him $125 million. But that wasn't the real breaking point. It was Christmas 1999 when his youngest daughter said something that changed everything. Those 8 words made him walk away from fame forever. The truth is heartbreaking. Garth Brooks was born on February 7, 1962, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But he didn't come into a normal home. His mother, Colleen Carroll, had once been signed to Capitol Records in the 1950s and even sang on a national TV show called Ozark Jubilee. But by the time Garth was born, her dreams had already collapsed. His father, Troy Brooks Jr., was a draftsman at an oil company, making just $6,000 a year while raising 6 kids. Every Friday night, the entire family had to perform in the living room. It wasn't optional. If you didn't sing, dance, or do something, there were consequences. Colleen judged those nights like she was still on stage. This odd tradition planted something deep in Garth. He didn't just want to be good, he needed to be perfect, and he wanted to win the crowd every single time. As he got older, Garth found something strange in a shoebox. He was only 6 when he discovered his mother's collection of rejection letters and failed music contracts. Most parents would have hidden something like that. Not Colleen. She played her old records over and over, teaching him guitar while making him memorize George Jones songs. She didn't stop there. She used a stopwatch to time his performances down to the second. By the time he was 8, he could perform a 3-minute version of White Lightning without a single mistake, and local musicians were stunned. Colleen's disappointment didn't just fill their home with music. It also filled Garth with pressure. She had already been crushed by Nashville. She wasn't going to let her son walk into it unprepared. By the time Garth reached high school in Yukon between 1978 and 1980, he was living 2 separate lives. During the day, he was a star athlete throwing javelins over 200 feet, good enough to earn a full scholarship to Oklahoma State University. That scholarship meant $8,000 a year, which was life-changing for a family like his. But at night, he was sneaking out to play gigs with a local band called Santa Fe. He earned just $25 per show, but that money meant everything. What's wild is that his coach never knew he was performing, and his bandmates had no clue he was an athlete. He was getting home at 2 in the morning and waking up just 3 hours later to train again. The explosive movement he used to throw a javelin became the exact energy he brought to the stage. One of the guitarists later said Garth was the most focused and prepared musician he had ever seen, and it was all because of that athlete's mindset. From 1980 to 1984, Garth attended Oklahoma State as an advertising major, with a decent 3.2 GPA. But his real learning didn't happen in class. It happened at a place called Willie's Saloon, where the floor was sticky, the crowds were loud, and the fights were real. He played there almost every night, earning $200 or $300 a week, more than many graduates were making in their first jobs. When a drunk man once yelled that Garth looked too clean to be real, he jumped into the crowd mid-song. That moment stuck. From then on, he added those wild jumps to his act. But what's even more surprising is that he kept notebooks rating every crowd. He wrote down which songs made people cry, which ones started fights, and which ones made people leave. He was collecting data years before anyone used that word. Meanwhile, his professors had no idea their quiet student was becoming a local legend after dark. In 1985, Garth packed up his car with $1,500 and drove to Nashville thinking this was it. But after just one day, he gave up. He'd only visited 3 record labels. One man told him he looked like a bank teller. That same night, he saw 2 bar fights. One of them started over a music deal gone wrong. Garth drove all the way back to Oklahoma and, in a moment of confusion and panic, proposed to his college girlfriend, Sandy Mall. They hadn't even talked about marriage, but she said yes. They got married on May 24, 1986, in a simple ceremony that cost $500. Years later, Garth admitted part of the reason he married her so suddenly was because he didn't want to go back to Nashville alone. Sandy's father didn't approve at first. He called Garth just another failed musician and offered him a job selling insurance instead. That rejection burned deep. Back in Oklahoma, newly married, Garth worked whatever jobs he could find. He sold boots during the day and bounced at bars at night. His old track and field body helped him deal with rowdy customers, but music was always on his mind. He formed a band called Stillwater and started recording rough demos in any studio that would take them. Those demos were raw. They weren't polished, but they had something that felt real. An entertainment attorney named Rod Phelps heard them and believed in what he heard. He pushed Garth to give Nashville another shot. So in 1987, 2 years after his failed attempt, Garth went back, this time with Sandy beside him. He felt stronger with her there. He got signed to a publishing company called Major Bob by Bob Doyle. But what really changed everything was a twist of fate at the Bluebird Cafe. Garth was supposed to perform 9th. Another writer canceled, and he got moved up. That night, Capitol Records rep Lynn Schultz was there to see the guy who bailed, but ended up hearing Garth instead. The song was If Tomorrow Never Comes. That performance changed everything. Garth recorded his debut album between late 1987 and early 1988 at Jack's Trax recording studios. But it wasn't easy. Most new artists let the label decide everything. Not Garth. He rejected songs that didn't feel like him. That stubbornness caused delays. His advance was just $10,000, but it felt like proof he was on the right path. The album came out on April 12, 1989, and at first, it wasn't a hit. Fewer than 20,000 copies were shipped. But it didn't stay quiet for long. One of the songs, Much Too Young to Feel This Damn Old, reached number 8 on the charts. Then, If Tomorrow Never Comes and The Dance both hit number 1. After 65 weeks, the album climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Country Albums chart. In those early days in Nashville, Garth and Sandy were scraping by. They lived in a tiny apartment, working any job they could find. He performed for free at music industry events just to get seen. Every gig counted. At a small writer's night, he met Pat Alger, and that meeting would lead to The Thunder Rolls, one of his most famous and controversial songs. Garth was slowly becoming a name among other struggling writers. Even before he had a hit record, people remembered him for how he made them feel on stage. But when the album finally took off in 1989, not everyone believed it would last. Capitol Records saw him as just another hat act, a term for forgettable country singers. What they didn't expect was how Garth lit up a stage. His shows at places like the Wild Horse Saloon exploded with energy. He didn't just sing, he performed. By the end of that year, Garth Brooks, the album, had sold over 10 million copies. The same people who doubted him were now rushing to figure out how this Oklahoma boy had broken through. Then came No Fences in August 1990. The album didn't just succeed, it exploded. It sold 18 million copies and became one of the best-selling albums of the entire decade across all genres. It had 4 number-1 hits, but the biggest shock was the music video for The Thunder Rolls. The original song had a verse where the wife kills her abusive husband, and in the video, Garth played the abuser. Both TNN and CMT banned it, but then VH1 picked it up, and suddenly, everyone wanted to see it. The backlash turned into rocket fuel. The video won CMA Video of the Year and was even nominated for a Grammy. That same year, Garth won 6 Academy of Country Music Awards, including Entertainer of the Year. His 1991 tour changed country music forever. He smashed guitars on stage, crowd-surfed through packed arenas, and sold out shows in minutes. Traditional fans were horrified. This wasn't how country music was supposed to look. But younger fans were hooked. At the 1991 CMA Awards, Garth won big again. He even joked in his speech about loving his George Jones, George Strait, and President George Bush, who was sitting in the front row. That night kicked off a winning streak that made history. He won Entertainer of the Year 4 times. In September 1991, something happened that had never happened before. A country album didn't just climb the charts, it exploded straight to the very top of every single one. Garth Brooks released Ropin' the Wind, and it didn't just go #1 on the country charts, it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, the main pop chart. That had never been done by a country artist before. Not even Kenny Rogers had pulled it off. What followed was 18 weeks of domination, 4 separate runs at #1 between September 28, 1991 and April 3, 1992. Brooks had taken a Billy Joel song, Shameless, and turned it into a country radio anthem. By 1998, the album had gone 14x platinum, over 14 million copies sold, 1 Grammy won, and at one point in 1992, Garth had the top 3 spots on Billboard's country chart all to himself. No one else has ever done that. Then came In Pieces, released August 31, 1993. Another instant #1. Another 10 million copies sold. But this time something else came with it: controversy. Among the upbeat hits like Ain't Going Down Till the Sun Comes Up was a song that split the country music world in half. We Shall Be Free wasn't just another track. It talked about equality. It talked about gay rights. That didn't sit well with parts of the country music industry. Some radio stations flat out refused to play it. Others organized boycotts. Then came another blow. Brooks criticized stores for selling used CDs, saying it hurt artists. He convinced Capitol Records to stop supplying those stores. Lawsuits followed. Capitol was forced to backtrack. But Brooks didn't lose ground. The album sold millions. He wasn't just a singer anymore. He was a force the industry couldn't ignore. And that became even clearer in 1993 and 1994 when he launched his first world tour. The numbers were beyond belief. Over $100 million in gross revenue. Texas Stadium held 65,000 fans per show, and every seat was full. He flew above audiences in a harness. He used pyrotechnics like a rock star. He wasn't just touring America. He sold out Birmingham. He sold out London. British media called him Garth Vader as he broke into a market that didn't even play country music on the radio. He didn't care. He helped launch a London radio station just to make sure country music had a place. He didn't just visit. He came back again in 1996. And everywhere he went, Europe, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, the fans came too. But behind all of it, trouble was brewing. In 1995, Brooks released Fresh Horses. It sold 8 million copies. On the outside, he was still untouchable. But inside Capitol Records, things were falling apart. Brooks was furious with their marketing. He had built a clause into his contract back in 1992 that let him hold back albums if he didn't like how they were being promoted. Now he used it. He refused to release Sevens until Capitol replaced its president. They did. Scott Hendricks was out. Capitol was in chaos. Jimmy Bowen, a former label president, said having Garth Brooks was like putting a gorilla in a chicken pen. And Brooks didn't back down. He delayed Sevens for 3 months, forcing the label to obey. No other artist had ever taken that kind of control. After Garth, everyone wanted more power. When Sevens finally came out on November 25, 1997, it shattered expectations again. 1 million copies shipped instantly. 3.7 million sold in just 7 weeks. And to launch it, Brooks put on a concert like no other. On August 7, 1997, he performed in Central Park. It wasn't just a show, it was an event. Over 1 million people filled the park. The New York Fire Department confirmed it. Paul Simon's 1991 record of 600,000 was left behind. Brooks performed on a 360-foot stage with a lighting rig 100 feet wide. HBO filmed it with 24 cameras. Special guests included Billy Joel and Don McLean. 14.6 million people watched it live on TV. It became HBO's highest-rated show of 1997. 6 Emmy nominations. The park was so packed that fans were only allowed to bring king-size bed blankets. Nothing bigger would fit. On July 8, 1992, right in the middle of all this fame, Garth's daughter Taylor Maine Pearl Brooks was born in Nashville. The timing couldn't have been worse. Sandy's pregnancy was unplanned, and their tour schedule was already overwhelming. They named her after James Taylor, the state she was conceived in, and Minnie Pearl. Sandy joined the tour with the baby, turning the tour bus into a nursery. On May 3, 1994, Brooks and Sandy welcomed their daughter August Anna at St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa. She weighed 7 pounds 3 ounces. Brooks had just wrapped up 127 shows in 6 months. He made it to the delivery room. But on September 18th, he was at Madison Square Garden when August took her first steps. On November 12th, he missed her first word, Dada, while recording in Nashville. He missed her first birthday, too. That night, he played to a sold-out crowd in Phoenix. Sandy made home videos so he could watch on the bus. When August had asthma attacks in 1995 and 1996, Brooks missed 2 emergency visits. The pattern was clear, and it started to cut deep. It got worse in 1996 when Ali Colleen was born. Brooks was in the middle of the Fresh Horses tour. That year, he performed 89 concerts. Sandy was alone for 47 days before the delivery. The birth took 18 hours. Her mother and sister were there. Brooks wasn't. He arrived 6 hours later after spending $8,000 on a private jet from Denver. That year, he was home only 73 days. He missed Allie's first Christmas, her first steps. Sandy hired a nanny named Martha Jenkins for $35,000 a year to manage 3 small children alone. Brooks made $60 million in 1996. But Sandy told friends it felt like she was married to a famous ghost. By March 1999, it broke. The tabloids had photos. Garth and Trisha Yearwood, smiling at Nashville's Bluebird Cafe on Valentine's Day. But this hadn't started suddenly. They'd met in 1987 when Yearwood was a demo singer earning $50 per session. In 1991, they recorded Like We Never Had a Broken Heart. They spent 47 hours together in the studio that month. In January 1999, Sandy discovered 127 phone calls between Brooks and Yearwood. Then she found a Tiffany & Cupper's receipt. Brooks said it was for his mother, but Yearwood was later seen wearing the necklace. What followed was something nobody in Nashville had ever seen before. Garth Brooks, the biggest country star in the world, was hit with a $125 million divorce settlement. It became the most expensive breakup in entertainment history at that time. Sandy walked away with their 700-acre ranch in Oklahoma, which was worth $8 million. She got $60 million in cash, $25 million in properties, and ongoing royalty payments that would end up totaling about $40 million over the next decade. Court records showed she got their massive 14,000-square-foot mansion too, and a monthly alimony of $125,000 for 5 years. Brooks kept his touring income, but he lost half his song catalog royalties. The whole thing wrapped up in just 90 days, which was shockingly fast for something that big. Officially, the papers said irreconcilable differences, but people in the music world whispered that the real cost wasn't the money. It was something deeper. Years later, in 2019, Sandy finally opened up about what their life had really been like. In the documentary, Garth Brooks, The Road I'm On, she said the marriage had quietly fallen apart long before the divorce. Garth was gone more than he was home. For a whole decade, he was on the road over 200 days a year. In 1993 alone, he did 287 shows across 47 states. Sandy said she felt like she was raising their 3 daughters completely alone. She spent birthdays by herself, school plays, holidays, bedtime stories, all without him. She said their last meaningful conversation happened in an airport parking lot in 1999. She asked him to choose between his family and his fame. But she already knew the answer. At that point, their marriage had turned into phone calls and silence. Their kids were growing up without really knowing their father. Then came a moment that shattered everything. Around Christmas 1999, Garth's daughter Taylor, just 8 years old, looked at him and asked, "Daddy, could you be a dad all the time instead of just sometimes?" He was stunned. He couldn't even name his kids' teachers or their best friends. He missed Taylor's first steps. He wasn't there for August's school play. He didn't see Allie's soccer win. One day, he found a drawing Taylor had made of their family. It showed Sandy and the 3 girls. There was no dad in the picture. That was when he realized he had become a stranger in his own home. That drawing and that question broke him. It made him walk away from everything. On October 26, 2000, Garth stood on stage in Nashville and stunned the world. He said the words nobody expected. "I'm here to announce my retirement." What made it even more shocking was that he said it on the same day Capitol Records was celebrating him selling 100 million albums in the U.S. He was only 38. He had 18 #1 hits. He was the biggest solo artist in American history. But in front of the cameras, with glassy eyes, he simply said it was over. He had promised himself he'd burn bright, burn fast, and now he was keeping that promise. Some thought it was just another publicity stunt, like the times he'd threatened retirement in 1992 and 1995, but this time felt final. What nobody expected was what he did next. Garth walked away from deals worth over $100 million. He didn't move into another mansion or disappear to Hollywood. He went back to Oklahoma. He moved into a 1-bathroom bunkhouse just to be near his kids. While the world waited for a comeback, he was tucking his daughters into bed every night. He left behind the private jets and tour buses. Instead, he packed school lunches and coached soccer. He said, "I've asked my wife to be father and mother long enough." Now it was his turn to be there. No amount of money could replace that. From 2001 to 2014, Garth and Sandy created something almost unheard of. Every single day at 6 p.m., they'd exchange the kids. One night with mom, one night with dad. This happened every day, for 14 years. The girls grew up seeing both parents every morning and every evening. Garth went to every game, every school event, just as another anonymous dad in the stands. He said those years were the best of his life. He admitted he had no manual for it, but he was building something real, something none of his fame ever gave him. Then came December 10th, 2005. That was the day he married Trisha Yearwood. They kept the wedding small, just 77 guests at their home near Tulsa. Trisha wore a ruby red dress when people arrived, then changed into a white wedding gown with sparkly beads and a dramatic skirt. Garth wore a black tuxedo and a cowboy hat. There weren't many photos. That was the way they wanted it. What mattered more was that Trisha was stepping into the lives of 3 young girls who didn't need a new mom, but did need someone to care. Garth said, "She's going to come in, and these girls are not only going to have a companion that is not their mom or their dad. She became part of the glue that held the new family together." Even as the world begged him to return to music, Garth chose things most celebrities never do. He turned down Hollywood offers. He spent mornings packing lunches and afternoons driving carpools. He said going to his daughter's soccer game was the best moment of his life. He became so quiet, so normal, that most people in town just knew him as Taylor, August, and Allie's dad. Trisha had never babysat before, and learning to parent was tough. But Garth gave her one piece of advice that stuck. Don't try to be their best friend, and don't try to be their mom. Still, the music in him never fully faded. On November 25, 2005, he quietly released a box set through Walmart and Sam's Club called The Limited Series. It included a disc called The Lost Sessions, with songs recorded between 1995 and 2005. It sold around 300,000 copies in just 3 days, but it didn't count on Billboard because of its exclusive deal. Critics and fans were split. Some said it broke his retirement promise. In February 2006, he re-released it with 6 more songs. Even he admitted he felt conflicted about putting music out again. Then came 2014. That's when everything exploded again. Garth announced shows in Dublin and sold 400,000 tickets in 90 minutes. But due to local disputes, all 5 concerts got canceled. Even so, he launched his first tour in 13 years on September 4, 2014. It turned into something nobody saw coming. 390 shows through December 2017. In Minneapolis alone, over 201,000 tickets sold. The tour made $364.3 million. He performed 2 shows a night in some cities. It was the biggest country tour ever. On November 11, 2014, Garth released Man Against Machine, his first studio album in 13 years. He admitted he was scared people had forgotten him. The lead single debuted at number 19 on the charts, but critics weren't kind. Some gave it just 2 stars. One review even said, he should have waited longer. He tried releasing it through his own digital store, Ghost Tunes, which shut down by 2017. Still, the album powered his tour, even if it didn't top the charts. Then, in October 2024, everything changed again, but not for the better. A former hair and makeup artist came forward with serious accusations. She claimed Brooks had raped her in May 2019, and that she endured ongoing harassment while working for him from 2017 to 2020. She filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles. Brooks denied everything, calling it an attempt to extort millions. He responded by filing his own lawsuit in Mississippi for defamation. The allegations came while he was still performing at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. After one show, he posted, "If there was ever a night that I really needed this, tonight was that night." The scandal cast a long shadow over a legacy that had been built on sacrifice, family, and redemption.